All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
I'm Kelsey, and today is a special episode of A Trial by Podcast.
Meta AI is the personal AI to help you with whatever you need. Plus, it meets you where you are. Not only is Meta AI now an app, but it's also on the apps you already know and love. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Messenger. Plus the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. It's easy to access wherever you are. So whether you're talking or texting, Meta AI is convenient to use throughout your day. Experience our newest AI that's tailored to you by downloading the Meta AI app. Try the Meta AI app today on the Apple App Store and Google Play.
Imagine this. The best pasta sauce you have ever tasted sits abandoned on a plate. Wasted sauce. That is a tragedy. If only you had used Barilla al Bronzo pasta. Its bronze-cut texture holds your sauce and scoops up every last drop. The Italians call that scarpetta. Capture sauce the Italian way. Barilla al Bronzo. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Hello, everyone. It is just me today. Emily is not here with me because I have some exciting bonus content for you. So I got together with my good friends, Allison and Mike, over at Crime and Coffee Couple. And when I say good friends, I just mean like they're amazing and I'm a huge fan of their podcast. So they didn't really know who I was probably until I DM'd them on Instagram. But I am so grateful that they agreed to do a little crossover episode with us. So that is what I have for you today. So we've got two different stories for you today. First, I am going to tell you the story of Baron Lee, who likes to go by the Asian 50 Cent. And if you're confused by that, don't worry, you'll get it by the end of the story. But basically, Baron Lee is a badass. Then after that, Allison and Mike are going to tell you the story of Miriam and Alan Helmick. So stay tuned for that. But real quick, I asked them to just record a little clip to tell our listeners about their podcast, what they do. And so let's give them a little bit of an intro here.
Hi, we're Mike and Allison from over at the Crime and Coffee Couple True Crime Podcast.
Yeah, I'm Mike, just in case there's any confusion there. And we really appreciate you having us on. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah, we're excited to be here with you guys and share our story along with Kelsey and Emily. And we've been podcasting since 2021. We've been married for 23 years.
Yeah, Allison tells me a new story every single week. I don't really listen to true crime at all, so it's pretty much guaranteed I haven't heard about it, unless it's like Jeffrey Dahmer or one of the other guys.
You know Ted Bundy.
Ted Bundy. We've been over this once or twice on the podcast. I know like 5 killers, basically. So, and also Allison's been listening to true crimes for like ever. So if she hasn't heard about it, then she's going to research it and try to deliver it to our listeners.
Yeah, we try to deliver the less known cases to our listeners. We do once a week podcasting, and then we do bonus episodes once a week as well.
And I tend to let the bad guys really have it. We're always really respectful to the victims, obviously. You know, they don't want to be in this situation, but the people, the murderers, man. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoy our episode. And thanks again for having us on.
They're just so great. I've already listened to their story, obviously, putting this together, and it's never good. The stories are never good, but they tell it very, very well. So I do think you guys are going to appreciate it. And with that being said, let's dive into the story of Baron Lee. Now, it was a quiet July morning in 2020 at an apartment complex in Bellevue, Washington. And Baron Lee, a 48-year-old father, stepped out of his home and headed towards his car to go to work. And without warning, the sharp cracks of gunfire pierced the air. A hooded figure emerged and opened fire at point-blank range. Lee was hit repeatedly. 9 shots pumped into his chest, his hips, his legs, and his arms. He collapsed to the pavement, bleeding and horrifically wounded as the gunman fled. Neighbors called 911, and within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. At that point, no one knew if Baron Lee would survive. The scene was sheer chaos and violence, a sudden attack with no immediate explanation. Who would want to hurt this loving 48-year-old father? Now, to understand Baron Lee's story, it's necessary to first understand the turmoil that he had endured long before the 2020 ambush. Baron's childhood was marked by instability and abuse. He was born in 1972 in Thailand, but as an infant, his family relocated to Hawaii. There, tragically, he suffered severe abuse at the hands of his own parents. At just 3 years old, authorities discovered Baron gravely injured. He had been burned and left unattended, barely clinging to life. He was immediately removed from his parents' custody and placed into foster care. Thus began a childhood spent moving from home to home to home. Baron remained in the foster system until age 17, cycling through 17 different foster placements, including 6 group homes. Frequent relocations and stints in juvenile detention punctuated his youth, making stability a foreign concept to him as a teen. This difficult upbringing hardened Baron's resilience and reshaped his values, but also meant that from an early age, he had to fight for any sense of family or safety in his life. Now, as an adult, Baron tried to build that stable family life that he never had as a child. That was what he wanted most. And in 2008, while living in Las Vegas, he met a woman named Christina Sayers under unlikely circumstances. They encountered each other online through a multiplayer game called RuneScape. And if you know, you know. I was a big RuneScape player when I was a kid. My name was Kelsey Welsie. That was my username. So Christina and Baron would spend evenings together just escaping into this fantasy game. And after months of virtual conversation, they met in person and a real-life romance quickly blossomed. Baron and Christina ended up marrying on October 10th, 2010. Shortly after their wedding, the couple made a major change because within a year, they left Nevada and moved to Washington State, ready to just start a new chapter of their lives together. And there, they hoped to build a family. Then in 2014, just 4 years after they were married, their son, Eric, was born. But what should have been a joyful milestone turned tragic. Eric was born with hyperbilirubinemia, a severe form of neonatal jaundice. Now, doctors initially misdiagnosed and mishandled his condition, which caused Eric to suffer brain damage and left him with lifelong physical and cognitive disabilities. Eric was going to need round-the-clock care for the rest of his life because of this. The young family found itself in crisis. They were consumed by hospital visits and therapy appointments. They pursued a medical malpractice lawsuit because it's expensive to have around-the-clock care. And a settlement did lead to a trust fund to cover Eric's care. That was about $600,000, a little bit over. And that trust would later become a critical piece of the puzzle when we talk about what happened to Baron. But Baron even said that that wasn't even going to be enough to take care of his son Eric for the rest of Eric's life. The medical bills were extremely high. But at the time, their lives just revolved around their son's fragile health. They were doing what any parent would do. Now, the stress of raising a medically fragile child did take its toll on the couple. Baron later said that their relationship was already deteriorating before Eric's birth. In 2015, Christina ended up filing for divorce, and the proceedings turned pretty bitter. She was awarded primary custody, while Baron, devastated to lose daily contact, was ordered to pay around $6,000 a month in child support. And this isn't because Baron made a ton of money. It was because the medical bills and all of the care that Eric needed was so expensive. But this financial burden left Baron homeless, living in his car while trying to stay involved in Eric's life. He would later say of Christina, quote, "The state put her rights ahead of mine," end quote. Christina remained Eric's main caregiver, but in 2017, Child Protective Services intervened after reports of neglect. Eric, who was a toddler at the time with complex medical needs, was removed from her care and placed into foster care. And this was a painful echo of Baron's own childhood. Determined to protect his son, Barron launched a 2-year legal battle. In May of 2019, he did win primary custody and control of Eric's medical trust. Christina was reduced to weekend visits, and friends said that Barron remained on high alert. The legal fight was over with Christina, but he didn't believe the danger had passed because the battle between Barron and Christina went past a normal bitterness and into a territory that was scary and inappropriate. On the morning of July 10th, 2020, just over a year after gaining full custody, Barron's life had seemingly stabilized. He worked as a car dealership sales manager, and he cared for Eric with support from his fiancée and his extended family. But the bitter conflict with Christina still loomed in the background. That morning of July 10th, as Barron walked to his car, violence erupted. A teenager in a hoodie sprinted toward him and opened fire. The first shot struck him before he could even react, and in seconds, 9 bullets had torn through his body. The shooter paused briefly but then fled, and Barron collapsed, bleeding out on the pavement, an apparent victim of a calculated ambush. Yet somehow, Barron survived. He was rushed to Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, where surgeons fought to save his life. He endured hours of surgery. 3 bullets were removed, but several remained lodged in his body because it was too dangerous to even try and remove them. He had suffered 12 wounds and multiple fractures, and after a week in the ICU, he was eventually discharged in a wheelchair, battered but still alive. Now, recovery was long and brutal. Over the next year, he endured additional surgeries and rehabilitation. It took 15 months before he returned to work. Emotionally, the trauma ran deep. It was not just physical, it was mental as well. Barron later said that he always believed the attack was not random. Even while bleeding out on the concrete, he knew exactly who orchestrated his attack. Now, once Barron was stabilized, detectives they were already investigating. Initially, they did think this to be a random attack or robbery gone wrong, but Barron pushed them to look deeper. Surveillance footage soon revealed a suspicious truck near his apartment that morning, and tracing it led to 2 teenagers from Mount Vernon. And these teenagers were strangers to Barron. He did not know them, and the police could find no connection between them. Their involvement made little sense. That is, until investigators reviewed phone records and uncovered a lot of contact with Barron's ex-wife, Christina Sayers. Police identified the shooter as 18-year-old Jordan Martin and the getaway driver as his teenage friend. Interrogations revealed that this was indeed a murder-for-hire plot. Christina had allegedly offered Martin $13,000 to kill Barron. She even provided a GPS tracker to help find him. The morning of the attack, the teens had driven to Barron's home super early, and they just were lying in wait. Even more chilling, Christina reportedly texted Martin weeks later, saying that the job was unfinished and wanting him to finish it because Barron had survived. In October 2020, authorities arrested Christina and both teens. She was charged with premeditated attempted first-degree murder. Now, Jordan faced similar charges, and the getaway driver was charged with assault and firearms offenses. Now, interestingly, Barron Lee had actually written a letter to the court asking the judge to give the boys lenient sentences. Even though they were active players in the plot to end Barron's life, Barron truly believed that Christina had taken advantage of these boys and that these boys deserved a second chance. Now, the attempted assassination of Barron Lee shocked the community and also devastated his family, of course. Barron had to relearn how to walk, even jog, and he lived with bullets still in his body. But the deeper scars were, of course, emotional. In his interviews, he described the heartbreak not just for himself, but for his son, who nearly lost his only stable parent, the only parent that was working hard to take care of their son's needs. Barron later said, quote, "My son could have been killed. That's what people don't see," end quote. Had Barron died, Christina would have regained custody and access to that trust fund. He continues saying, quote, "Everyone sees a shooting, but I wasn't the target. My son has always been the target," end quote. Of course, the implication there is that in order to get to that trust fund, she had to get rid of Barron. Now, the legal process dragged on for years, and it wasn't until 2023 that Christina Sayers ended up accepting a plea deal, and she was sentenced to 13 years in prison for solicitation to commit murder. Jordan Martin and the getaway driver also took plea deals, receiving sentences of about 12 and 8 years respectively. This case served as a stark reminder of how domestic disputes, especially those involving custody and money, can spiral into violence.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Spotify.
We off? 30 seconds of carefree bliss. Oof, like wind in your hair carefree. Oh, like using Clorox disinfecting all-purpose cleaner in the home carefree. Yes. Like Doc slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox carefree. He's on a roll now. Spit toothpaste on the faucet. You got it. You got it. Peanut butter on the light switch. Oh, spritz, spritz. Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
What's worse than an ad interrupting your favorite music or podcast? That uninspired coffee you've been drinking while working, which is why Flavia is elevating your everyday coffee experience. Now you can enjoy cafe-quality beverages like coffee, tea, frothy lattes, and creamy hot chocolate made right in your home office, actual office, or wherever you want to upgrade your mug with bold, delicious flavors. Visit Flavia.com to shop the collection of machines and beverages now.
It also exposed the vulnerabilities of youth manipulated into committing crimes like this by someone so much older than them. Barron later said that the system failed to see the warning signs in Christina's behavior, even though he had been pointing it out to them for years. And today, Barron continues to raise Eric, now without his mother, aside from limited virtual contact. With the support of his new fiance and his stepchildren, he has successfully built a very loving and very stable home for them all. And while the bullets remain, as do the emotional scars, so does Barron's determination. He sometimes jokes, quote, "The only other person I know of who was shot 9 times and lived is 50 Cent. Too bad I can't release an album and make millions," end quote. Barron, if you release an album, I will listen to it. I just feel like it would be fantastic. Now, Barron Lee's story, it was one of horror, but also one of hope, a testament to resilience and to a father's love prevailing against all odds. Barron has been extremely active in sharing his story because he thinks his story, it's not just about the attack, it's about domestic abuse against men. And he's really working to spread awareness to show that men can be victims to these things in heterosexual relationships as well. And we need to be looking for the warning signs. So I highly recommend that everyone follows Barron on social media. His username on Instagram is @Barron, BARON, B Lee, that's BLI. .CKMD. And you'll know you found him because his username, once you go to his profile, it says Asian 50 Cent. That's what he likes to go by, is Asian 50 Cent, which, I mean, the guy can't get more lovable. Not only is he a survivor, not only is he an amazing father and an advocate for other men who have gone through the same types of hardships that he has, whether it be the foster care system or custody disputes or domestic abuse, he's also funny. And I'm waiting for the album to drop. I hope you all, enjoyed is never the right word. I hate saying it. I hope you enjoyed this horrific true crime story, but I hope you all found the story interesting and you see the importance in it and the importance in what Barron is doing and why he is sharing his story. And normally I would end my story with court is adjourned for the day, but we're not quite adjourned yet, which you're probably happy because my story was very short. I know it was a little shorty today, but we're going to go on over to Allison and Mike's story. So here it is.
So today we're going to be talking about the murder of Alan Helmick. So after police were summoned to the home of Alan and Miriam Helmick on Tuesday afternoon, June 10th, 2008, 51-year-old Miriam told investigators that when she left her home that morning, she was going shopping. Her 62-year-old husband of 2 years, this is Alan Helmick, he was heading off to jump into the shower. The couple had tentative plans to meet later that afternoon, late morning, early afternoon. They weren't entirely sure where they were going to meet, but according to Miriam, she intended to have them meet at a Chinese buffet. This was in Grand Junction, Colorado.
A woman after my own heart. Love a good Chinese buffet.
Yeah, you like your options. So Miriam said goodbye. She walked out the door, and this was the last time she ever saw Alan alive. So Alan met Miriam when he began taking ballroom dancing classes. This was in January of 2005, and this was at his friend's suggestion. So at the time, he was trying to do something light and fun as a way to pull himself out of an immense period of grief after he lost his wife of 36 years. This is Sharon, and her death was very sudden. She died of a sudden heart attack on New Year's Eve 2003. The couple raised their 4 children together while Alan ran the local savings and loan, and eventually they moved onto owning his own mortgage title companies. They basically likened him into some of my research as George Bailey.
That's exactly what I thought of.
Yeah, me too.
The old building and loan.
So Alan and Sharon, they had been together since the tender age of 14. So really, they had spent their entire life together. They had grown from adolescents to adults. They had children. They got, the whole thing.
So you could definitely understand why he'd be pretty upset when she was gone.
100%. So after losing the love of his life so suddenly, Alan found his world just in shambles, crumbled around him. He was lost with his partner no longer by his side. So meanwhile, Miriam, she herself was dealing with her own loss after her 23-year-old daughter, Amy, died of a drug overdose. And this happened in 2000, and then 2 years later, her husband, Jack, died from suicide. So they're both basically buried in grief when they come upon each other in January of 2005. So with Alan's persistence, after they met at the ballroom dancing class, he and Miriam eventually found solace in one another, and 1 year later, they were married. This happened in June of 2006. So according to Miriam, Alan was a knight in shining armor in her world. He did a lot of things without having to be asked, just those little acts of kindness.
Oh, I wouldn't know what that's like.
He would take her car and go fill it up with gas because he knew she was running low. So she would get in her car expecting that she'd be the one to go, and she'd be like, wow, what a guy.
Yeah, it reminds me of my dad.
Those little things really do mean so much. They're kind of coming together and they're forming this beautiful relationship. So meanwhile, those that loved Alan, they could see the light and optimism returning to his world, and this was something that had been missing since Sharon's untimely death. So when Alan failed to arrive for their lunch date and Miriam's phone calls to her husband were going unanswered, they start slowly like, okay, Alan, I was thinking maybe 11 a.m. We'll do the Chinese buffet. See you there. And then, she shows up. He's not there. So she keeps calling, but she's not getting a call back, not getting a text back. So she headed back to their 3,200 square foot home. They lived at 34999 Seminole Road, and it was situated on 40 acres south of Grand Junction and Whitewater. And it was at this location because they had so much land that they raised horses together. So when she entered their home just before noon, Miriam found the house ransacked. And meanwhile, Alan was laying motionless on the kitchen floor in a pool of blood. She frantically dialed 911, and she told dispatchers that her husband was a victim of robbery. So as investigators arrived on the scene, they found Miriam to be very distraught, and as they entered the home, they found her crouched above her husband's deceased body. it appeared that he had been shot in the head while there was a .25 caliber shell casing lying on the floor next to him alongside his wallet as well as his cell phone. So when officers did a sweep of the home, because of course they don't know if the person who did this is still inside,
Sure.
They could see that the house was in a bit of disarray. There were drawers that were pulled out. The trash can in Alan's office was tipped over. But they couldn't help noticing that some drawers that didn't make sense were also pulled open, including kitchen drawers. I mean, most people are not keeping valuables or cash in their kitchen drawers. So this was just a bit of a red flag right off the get-go for investigators. And in the meantime, guns, jewelry, and other valuables were left untouched. And this left investigators to believe that the house gave off a staged robbery vibe.
Absolutely. Every story that we've told that's like this, it's like, this is definitely staged. No, I mean, if you're going to do this, like, take the valuables, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, throw them somewhere. Throw them away if you don't want them, unless you want to keep them, in which case it might be somebody very close to him.
Or bury them out in a field somewhere.
Right.
So following investigative protocol, officers began talking to Miriam because, as we know, you're always going to, start in the inside of a victim's circle.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to talk to Miriam about what her morning looked like before she came home and found Alan laying on the floor. So she, in addition to being talked to, they swabbed her clothes for blood. They also tested her for the presence of gunshot residue, and both of these tests did come back negative. So Miriam explained that before she left the house, which was between somewhere around 8:15, 8:30 that morning, Alan had given her a wad of cash for her shopping trip, and he said one of his signature lines to her, "Have fun like hell." So she provided investigators with these printed receipts that were basically just shoved in her pockets to prove the fact that she had visited these stores that day in order to establish her movements. And, in addition to these receipts, they also were looking at her cell phone to track its pings. So basically what investigators found was that she had moved from one end of the valley to the other that morning. And it wasn't long before investigators discovered that both the dance studio as well as the horse farm that the couple owned together were hemorrhaging the bank accounts dry, and Alan was severely struggling financially. So by April of 2008, this is 2 months before Alan's murder, things had gone from bad to worse, and Alan had no choice but to sell his company in order to stay afloat. And, Miriam is describing her husband like this knight in shining armor, and because he wants to make her happy, he's purchasing this property for this horse farm because this was something that she had dreamt of since she was a child. And of course, they met at a dance studio, but at that studio, she didn't own it. That was another purchase he made to make his wife happy, was this other dance studio. So meanwhile, they're not really making the cash they expected, and they are getting deeper and deeper into a pit. So on April 30th, this is only 41 days before his murder, Miriam and Alan drove out to Delta, Colorado. This is a 30-minute drive from where they lived, and this was in order to collect a $125,000 check from his interest in the title company. So after this meeting, they just stop off, they pull the car off because Miriam said that she had to use the restroom, and meanwhile, Alan didn't, so he just waited in the car for her. And he's sitting there in the car, and he starts to smell the odor of smoke. So he glances back, and he was stunned to see that the back of his car was ablaze. So when Delta authorities responded to this call, they found that there was a piece of burned rope coming out of the gas tank at the trunk of the car, which looked just like a wick. And this basically painted a clear case of arson. I mean, we don't have, wicks coming out of our gas tanks.
Not usually. I mean, typically it's a really bad thing. And that could have been a whole lot worse than it actually was instead of just some smoke.
Absolutely. That car could have exploded.
My favorite thing about Shipt since I signed up for Target Circle 360? No price markups when I order same-day delivery from tons of local stores. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. I won't lie, I've had too much fun being like, markups on groceries? Not in my fridge. Markups on pet food? Not for my DOG. Markups on tools, electronics, home goods, meds? Not in my house. Anyway, it's awesome. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
So Alan was asked by these detectives and investigators that came to the scene if Miriam could have been responsible, because they're going off and collecting this large check, and then she just so coincidentally has to go in and quickly use the restroom, leaving him alone in the car.
Yeah.
And I guess she had to fetch something out of the trunk of the car, so she was back there fiddling and potentially had the opportunity to do so. However, nobody wants to believe that their significant other would do such a thing. So Alan was adamant that she would never have done such a thing and requested that the investigation be stopped. So with Alan now murdered, investigators could only help but wonder, are these two incidents connected? So Miriam described her relationship with her husband, and she spoke of his generosity and the fact that he had spent so much of his time and his life truly trying to make her happy. And he would do so many little things for her, like I mentioned, filling up the gas tank and, doing things like that she didn't have to ask. He would anticipate her needs and do them. So as days went by after Alan's murder, no suspects were taken into custody. But meanwhile, Miriam claimed that strange things were happening to her and around her house, and they were starting to make her feel uneasy. She told investigators that she would come home and the doors that she had locked would be unlocked, and drawers that she remembered being closed were open. And she was convinced that she had the sense that somebody was watching her. And one time, Miriam and her friend Penny, they came back to her home. This happened on Thursday, June 26th, and they came around to come through the front door. And they noticed a canary yellow envelope that was tucked under the welcome mat that sat at the front door. So on the front of the card, as they start looking more closely, they see a handwritten message, and it read, "To the grieving widow." So now Miriam opens the card, and there was another handwritten message, and it read, "Alan was first. You're next. Run, run, run." And it's in all caps. It has no punctuation whatsoever. And instead of "you're next" as an apostrophe RE, it's just YOUR. So after Miriam contacted police, after this incident, an investigator with the Mesa County Sheriff's Office began looking into the incident, and police started contacting the manufacturer of the card to see which stores carried and sold this card. So this investigator learned that it was sold at a chain of City Market grocery stores. So when they checked the surveillance from a store that just so happened to be situated near Miriam's friend Penny's house, they saw none other than Miriam in the store making this purchase.
Boom, bingo.
Yep. So she makes this purchase on June 22nd. This is 4 days before she discovered the card on her doorstep. So, of course, the investigator confronted her with this information, and she argued that she had done what she had done. So she admitted, she did purchase this card. She did write it because she felt that the police were not taking her reports of suspicious cars driving around her neighborhood seriously enough. And she hoped that this threatening message might amp up their investigation because she didn't feel they were taking her seriously enough and protecting her.
All right, not a bad story, not a bad backstory. I mean, if she thought about this a little bit and she got caught and she's like, all right, I'm going to go with this.
Yeah, but it's never a good idea to make a ruse and waste a detective's time combing through CCTV footage, contacting the makers of this card. That's illegal.
I'm not advocating for it whatsoever.
So
at least she has a story. She's not like, yep, you got me.
Yeah. So investigators, they also came to learn that despite the fact that Alan had always been an attentive father to his now grown children, In the months before his death, they had noticed that their dad was starting to isolate himself from the family, as well as friends and concerned business associates. So it wasn't just them that noticed. Alan's business, people, they noticed too. And it just kind of seemed to them that since he married Miriam, his health had taken a downward turn. He was just sick more often. He was spending more time in bed. Yet at the same time, I will tell you, crime scene investigators, they found 9 different prescription bottles in his medicine cabinet. So this suggested that Alan legitimately suffered from health issues.
Sure, he was older, 62, so...
Yeah, but 62 is not very old.
No.
I mean, we're talking about 9 different prescriptions. So when technicians examined Miriam's computer, they found some alarming searches that had been done in the weeks before his murder. So some of these included Ambien overdose, purple foxglove, So I didn't know what purple foxglove was, but I looked it up. It's a toxic species of flowering plant.
Oh, great. Now it's on our Google history.
Yes, it is. As well as Viagra overdose. So the fact that Alan's children noticed that he was more lethargic and tired in the months leading up to his death, and paired with the fact that Miriam had been making these suspicious searches on the computer, they started to wonder maybe she had been poisoning their father. However, I will tell you, once the autopsy was done and the toxicology was done, they did find no traces of poison in Alan's body. But according to his autopsy, he had suffered from severe heart disease. And this could, explain why he had been so fatigued.
Sure.
Was that his heart wasn't healthy. So when speaking with Alan's family, they described Miriam as an exceptionally controlling woman. She actually went as far as to hold on to Alan's cell phone, and she would keep it in her purse.
And that's one of the things I thought of when you said he was becoming distant.
Mm-hmm.
Just usually that's a controlling spouse or, just a partner of some sort. It's like, no, you're going to talk to me. You don't need anybody else. That's basically the thought process.
I don't like that at all. So his children said that he had been basically unreachable in the weeks before his death. So when they would call his phone, it would be none other than Miriam, always picking up and answering. And I'm sure that was very frustrating. It's like, oh, lady, I just want to talk to my freaking dad.
Right.
So when they'd be like, oh, hey, Miriam, looking for my dad, she would just give some sort of excuse as to why Alan couldn't pick up his phone. So there had been suspicious activity from Alan's accounts, and investigators believe that Miriam had forged multiple checks that had totaled $40,000. So when she was confronted with this information, she just tried to blow it off and said that Alan had been aware that she had been writing these checks since she was the one that was responsible for payroll as well as like other business expenses. She was responsible for the financial aspect.
Yeah, can't get his side right now, so
of course
that's all good.
They only have her word, and she's saying, I handled the finances with both the dance studio and the horse farm. So in the months before his death, the bank had been unsuccessfully trying to get a hold of Alan, and we know she's been keeping his cell phone in her purse. So what they wanted to talk to him about was the fact that he was in serious financial trouble, and nearly $140,000 had been transferred from his personal checking account to cover 2 outstanding loans. So authorities also learned that earlier in the year before Alan's death, Miriam unsuccessfully tried to get a $2 million insurance policy on Alan without telling him.
Ooh.
And once the logistics kicked in and you had to get certain signatures and whatnot, she realized she couldn't do it. So investigators were convinced that Miriam was solely responsible for her husband's murder, and they truly believed that money was the root of it all. So they discovered that she had a nefarious past, and in 2004, her boss at the dance studio where she was working had accused her of petty theft and embezzlement, although she was found not guilty of those charges. And earlier that year, when she was living in Jacksonville, Florida, she had tried to cash nearly $7,000 worth of counterfeit checks. And this was something that she admitted to. She confessed, and she spent 3 years in jail because of this.
Any drug problems or anything? Just was telling me he likes to steal money.
Very big on wanting that money.
Man.
So after Alan's death, Miriam returned to Florida to live with her son, and she was back out on the prowl, and she was looking for a man.
Yep.
And not just any man. She wanted a rich man. So she told a friend that she found a dating website. It was basically made for people who were on the wealthier side. And she told her friend that whoever she dated would have to make a bare minimum of $500,000 a year. So 6 months after Alan Helmick's murder, Miriam was arrested in Florida, and this happened on November 8th, 2008. And she was charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder for the car fire incident, as well as forgery. So she was held at the Duval County Jail on a $2 million bond until she was able to be extradited back to Grand Junction, Colorado. So at the time of her arrest, she's taken into, police custody. And with this, authorities find a driver's license as well as paycheck stubs and credit cards, all under the name of Sharon Helmick. So it was clear that Miriam was trying to assume Alan's late wife's identity, although she claimed she was only doing so because she didn't have her own ID after Colorado investigators confiscated them.
She's a seasoned criminal. She has an answer for everything, and she is totally saying it like it's 100% truth. And like people that like us that are just honest, like we can't understand how these people can just lie to our faces, but they can. And these criminals have no problem with it.
And what I never can wrap my head around is why somebody thinks they deserve money that isn't theirs, that they didn't earn.
They consider themselves working for it by like embezzling and writing those bad checks. They're working for it, they get it, and they're like, well, it's mine now.
So gross. So a group from the DA's office, this is just kind of ironic. They had only recently watched a movie called No Country for Old Men. And they immediately thought of the scene where a villain blows up a car and this results in a massive explosion. And they wondered, did Miriam get the idea to do this to Alan when they found the wick in his car on fire? And lo and behold, only a few days before Alan's murder, someone at the Helmick house had rented that movie. So, those two things are very coincidental.
Yeah.
So the evidence of this case was circumstantial, as the murder weapon has never been found. There was no blood, fingerprints, or DNA to incriminate Miriam. Obviously, her prints and DNA are going to be in the house because she lives there. So the prosecution discussed gaps in the time that Miriam was out shopping that would have allowed her to be out of surveillance, and this could have potentially just established an alibi for her. So she might be seen at this store on surveillance, but then maybe she could have slipped away and gone back home.
With EA Sports College Football 26, you can rise from high school recruit to Heisman legend or cement your legacy as a coach by leading your program to glory. Pre-order the deluxe edition of the game today as part of the MVP bundle at go.ea.com/MVP-bundle to start playing 3 days early and more. EA Sports College Football 26 is rated E for everyone. Includes in-game purchases, including random items.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Or maybe she even shot her husband before she left the house somewhere between 8:15 and 8:30 that morning. And who knows? Because we know she didn't have gunshot residue on her. We know there was no blood on her. Maybe she changed, she took a shower and all of that. So with this, she could have left the house, tossed the gun, gone shopping, established an alibi, and then come home and discovered her husband. So in December of 2009, after 5 hours of deliberation, Mike, what do you think the jury found Miriam?
Oh, this is tough because there's a shadow of a doubt. I don't know. Not guilty.
They found her guilty of first-degree murder.
All right, good.
Attempted first-degree murder for the arson case, as well as forgery. And with this, she was sentenced to life in prison plus 108 years.
Wow, how about that? That's fantastic.
Very good. So Miriam continues to maintain that she is an absolutely innocent woman who is determined to clear her name, and she says she will not stop until she succeeds. And her numerous appeals have all been rejected thus far. And meanwhile, Alan's loved ones are trying to focus more on what a wonderful person he was, rather than the violent way that he died and by who he died at the hands of. Because we know that Alan was a doting husband that wanted nothing more than to make his wife happy. And then to think that he could have been murdered by the same person is just truly heartbreaking.
It's terrible. Somebody like this piece of garbage Miriam gets to marry this guy who would have been a great husband to somebody who's actually a decent human being. But unfortunately, this scumbag Miriam took him and took his life.
Yeah, and it's just so sad because he was married to, his childhood sweetheart for so many years, almost 4 decades. She dies suddenly. He thinks he's getting his second chance at happiness, and then it ends like this. And he was always described as a good friend. He was a lot of fun, someone that you would meet up with and you'd be guaranteed to have a laugh.
Well, he's a good businessman. You could just tell, he probably knows his way around people, has some good jokes and all that stuff. I'm sure he was a great guy.
Right. And then there's a twist in this case. So coincidentally, Miriam's first husband, this is Jack Giles, he died, which I mentioned earlier in this episode, of suicide. So he died from a bullet wound in their South Landmark Circle, Jacksonville home. This happened 6 years earlier on April 15th, 2002. This was one day after Jack's 46th birthday. However, 1 month later, the case was closed because it was ruled a suicide. So after now learning that, this lady is
capable of murdering her husband.
Yes. So she's a suspect. At the time, she was only a suspect. Of course, we know she was then convicted of Alan's murder. Jacksonville detectives started to wonder, could she have been the person responsible for murdering her first husband?
Yeah.
So at the time of his death, Jack had been asleep in bed beside his wife, Miriam, when a bullet entered the right side of his head, despite the fact that he was a strictly left-handed person.
They didn't think about this one?
No.
Okay, good.
Apparently not. And when detectives responded to their home, they found the gun in Jack's right hand. So Miriam told responding officers she's trying to, if she is the one responsible for this man's death, she wants to set the scene. So as officers are rushing into the home, she's painting this picture. Oh, he's been so depressed. He's been so suicidal. And she's putting it on the fact, and it is a tragic thing, that their 23-year-old daughter, Amy, had died of a drug overdose. Now, I will tell you, the couple also had a son together. This is Chris. So according to Jack's brother, Tim, he never believed Miriam's story and said Jack was not that depressed. In fact, he was a workaholic. He was focused very much so on work. And of course, he was devastated that his daughter died, but there's a difference between devastation and suicidal. So Tim did not believe from the get-go that this was the true case. But what are you going to do when a medical examiner says, okay, yes, case closed, this is suicide? So he also elaborated to say that the marriage between Miriam and Jack was anything but perfect. According to Tim, they were never really together. They basically just tolerated each other just for the sake of their kids. At one point, they separated, and during that time, Miriam went off to live with another man. So investigators learned that not only was Miriam the beneficiary for her daughter, Amy, but also for Jack. So after their deaths, she quickly collected on both, cases, and she blew through first her daughters and then her husband's. So 6 months after Jack's death, the court ordered Miriam to give half of the insurance money to a child that he had from a previous relationship. But by that point, all of the money was gone.
Jeez.
So this was the time she decided to leave Florida and head west to Colorado in early 2005. And this is when a friend told her about a job opportunity at the dance studio there. And this is when she met Alan in January of 2005. So you think about her daughter who died of a drug overdose. And then you think of her husband.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't the daughter of a drug overdose who gave her the drugs or whatever.
Right.
Oh, man.
Right.
I didn't think of that.
So police tried to charge Miriam for the murders of Jack Giles as well as their daughter. But the case, according to investigators, it just wasn't strong enough. And their causes of death remain suicide by gunshot and drug overdose.
And I mean, the cops were probably trying to close it quickly, be like, this poor lady's going through her husband committing suicide and her daughter, unfortunately, overdosing. Like, let's just clean this up and get it all done with instead of like going after her. And unfortunately, they probably should have gone after her.
Right. So, of course, this is a sad murder of Alan Helmick. But is Miriam also responsible for murdering her own daughter and her first husband, in addition to her second husband?
Definitely possible. She's a scumbag of a human being. So anything's possible.
Right. So just a very sad case.
So crazy. Well, thank you for telling us about Alan. Poor Alan. It's, just trying to get out of his hole that he was in with, losing his wife and everything and being lonely, and then sees this woman who's just going after him for his money and ends up murdering him. And God knows how many other people she murdered.
Right.
Could be the Black Widow just going around.
Absolutely.
Sick. So thank you so much for listening. If you want to hear more, come on over to Crime and Coffee Couple. We definitely appreciate you listening. We're available wherever podcasts are served, and we've been doing this for quite a while. So we'd love to have you over. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yep. And we release a once a week podcast for all listeners, free of charge. And then once a week, we do bonus content for our paid subscribers.
So if you really, really love us, you get 2 episodes every week.
And like Mike says, we will welcome you with open arms, come one and come all.
Yeah, maybe even kisses on the cheek, European style.
All right, Mike, we're trying to get people to our platform, not drive them away.
That's what I didn't say on the lips. So yeah, I didn't want to be creepy or anything. And we're going to close out this episode just like we do every episode.
And until next time, bye.
I just wanted to say one last thank you to Allison and Mike for doing this little crossover with us. It's a little bit different than the way I've done them in the past, but it was a little bit easier with our schedules to just record the stories separately. Now, if you guys have never listened to Crime and Coffee Couple, you need to check them out. I really think you guys are going to love them. You can listen to them wherever you get your podcasts, and then you can follow them on social media at Crime and Coffee, and then the number 2. Crime and Coffee 2. And you'll see on Instagram, their title says Crime and Coffee Couple True Crime Podcast. So you'll know you found them. But I really hope you guys enjoy. And thank you again to Allison and Mike for doing this with me. And with that, court is adjourned for the day. Bye. Now, if you guys love the pod, make sure you're following us wherever you're listening so you don't miss out on any future episodes.
And while you're at it, we'd be forever in your debt if you had left us a 5-star rating.
For more content from us, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Both are at A Trial by Podcast.
You can also follow us on our Facebook and join our Facebook group.
You can shop our merch by clicking the link in the show notes or visiting our website, atrialbypodcast.com.
A Trial by Podcast is a fully independent podcast. If you'd like to help support us, you can do so by donating through the link in our show notes.
The site we use for this is called Buy Me a Coffee, but don't worry, your donations will never be used for coffee or frivolous things, only for expenses related to running and growing the podcast. So thank you guys for your support.
Thank y'all. Huzzah.
Huzzah.